Well, when you campaigned the last time, I was down in Wilmington putting out lawn signs for you, and I noticed some of the schools down there were surrounded by oil wells. And two things. How do you feel about the environment in your district alone, and this probably covers a lot of districts in America, of where they put schools and what's around them? And the other thing is, how do you feel about charter schools?
Two questions. All right, I'll take the first one first. I think that we need to look at areas that are most impacted by an intersection of oil refineries, raw sewage, diesel fuel. I'm talking about places like Wilmington, which is in the harbor. It's in my district, 90% Latino. It's not right. The communities of color should be bearing the burden of oil refineries and sewage treatment and so forth. We need to address this problem, and we need to correct it. There are oil refineries that would rather violate the law and pay the fines than fix the problem because it's cheaper to pay the fines. That's wrong. Clearly, the fines are not hefty enough. Part of my platform is we need to address these problems of environmental justice, not just in Wilmington, but in San Pedro, you know. We have problems with pollution that literally leave people gasping for air. That's not right.
Yes, and you have the Alameda Corridor going through your district, and that's been a special problem for them, the air quality surrounding the Alameda Corridor. And for those folks who don't know what we're talking about, that's a rail line that goes from the ports up to the rail yards in downtown, part of the logistics industry in California, which for those also who don't know is the biggest industry in California. Now what about the charter schools?
Brad, I would prefer to see a massive investment in public education. Mm-hmm. My fear is that charter schools are a step towards privatization, if not outright privatization of public schools. However, that being said, there are charter schools that are doing good work. You know, Lenox, their Academy of Science, it's the top 25th out of 100 schools in the United States when analyzed by a U.S. News and World Report. What are they doing? They're adopting some of those best practices with teachers mentoring students from 9th grade to 12th grade, keeping the same group together, and developing a family atmosphere. So I know that charters can be an area for innovation, and I would encourage that, but I think there must be a middle ground where we have more regulation of those schools. Perhaps those schools are within a division of a school district where they are given more autonomy. But the last thing that we want to see are charter schools where you have the Staples classroom or the C's Candy cafeteria.
The McDonald's cafeteria. Well, I totally agree with you on all of that. I know that the charter school, to me, is just another kind of sideways dance, shuck and jive, if you will, from the old voucher movement, which was also a thing from Chris Whittle, a guy up in Knoxville, Tennessee, when I was living in Tennessee. He came up with this idea of privatizing education because it was his premise that public education had failed, which brings us to the new public institution that we're trying to put together, Medicare for All, and what's going on in Congress. Now, we want to elect you to Congress. We want to get you there, a progressive replacing a blue dog. There's a raging debate in the Democratic Party right now. What is the value of the blue dogs? The theory was, instead of having a Republican in that district, we'll elect a Democrat who will vote with us on the big issues. Well, as it turns out, they won't vote with us on the big issues. Now the theory is, well, yeah, they won't vote with us on the big issues, but they do vote with us on some of those other issues. So what's your feeling about the party vis-a-vis the Congress and what's going on with this health care bill? Now we're going to go to conference. We're going to see what we get. How do you feel about that?
Well, in terms of the health care bill, I think we absolutely have to fight for a public option for something besides a mandate to enrich the insurance companies. That's not what health care reform should be about. I'm a big single-payer advocate, as you are, and ideally, certainly in California, I'm hoping that we will have an expanded Medicare system. In the interim, we want to make sure that what happens in Washington isn't going to place roadblocks in our way towards single-payer in California. I very much supported the Kucinich Amendment to give states the freedom to choose single-payer if they wanted to, and I support a very strong public option. I think that anything less than that is very, very troubling. In terms of the blue dogs, I would rather see money invested in media, in voter outreach, than in campaigning to elect more people like my opponent, Jane Harman, or campaigning to elect people like Joe Lieberman, who was once in the Democratic Party. Now scorned. So he still has his chair.
I find myself in total agreement with you. Now let me play a little hardball with you here. Let's imagine in the new progressive world we want in 2010 that you get elected to Congress, and you're the congressperson from the 36th, and the speaker comes to you, and let's also imagine that they are able to hold on to the Congress, even though they're not really delivering on a lot of the things we sent them there to do. And the speaker comes to you and says, Marcy, if you want to be on a good committee and you want to eventually become a chair, you're going to have to shave your opinion, you're going to have to tone it down, and you're going to have to get along to go along. What's your response?
My response is I hope that before that happens, I have built a stronger relationship with the base of the progressive Congress members. In other words, I have helped strengthen the Congressional Progressive Caucus. I don't think you can do much alone as a single person. You need to have a group. You need to be organized. We need a strong progressive caucus in Congress, and we need a progressive caucus in Congress that has a relationship to the respective progressive caucuses in each state. It should be like a wheel with spokes to each state's progressive caucus. That's the only way you can really accomplish much, in my opinion. If you stand there by yourself and say, I'm going to hold out, well, you can hold out and you'll never get anywhere. That's why I'm a member of Progressive Democrats of America. We have members of the Progressive Caucus on our advisory board, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, John Conyers, Barbara Lee, and others. And I think that if you're going to be involved in electoral politics and you're a progressive, it has to be about organizing. It can't be about being a one-man band or a one-woman band.
Well, there's a theory that I totally disagree with in the DNC that there are certain districts where you cannot elect a progressive, so let's don't even try. Let's elect a Republican light, a blue dog. I think it's a failure of imagination, which I think our Democratic Party is suffering from greatly now. What do you think?
I agree. A lot of it has to do with outreach and framing. During this congressional campaign, I've had people approach me and say, Marcy, it's all about framing. And other people will say it's all about issues. I tend to be more of an issues person, but I do understand the importance of framing, and I think it has to be about both. I think you have to build common ground with whomever you're talking to. And the more charged you are, probably the less effective you are in terms of, one-on-one dialogue. You have to build common ground, you have to explain your reasoning, and you have to put forth a solution.
Well, then let me ask you this, because I feel that we know as progressives what we're opposed to. But now we need to build on the positive progressive proposal. What are our positions in the future that are positive? Like you say, in building collaboration and common ground and showing people that what we're talking about, far from being crazy or out there, I think we're kind of mainstream Americans, mainstream citizens of the world in what we talk about. What is your positive progressive proposal going forward for next year?
My positive proposal would be, let's start a Green New Deal, as I mentioned before. Mm-hmm. Let's invest in municipalities. We are starving our cities, starving our state. Let's put people back to work, building our future, a new green economy. Let's invest in education because that is the future. And certainly, let's give states the right to enact single-payer health care. We have a great future ahead of us if we mobilize and if we organize.
I totally agree. And listen, in getting organized, we want to be able to help on your campaign. Just tell our listeners how they can get involved in your campaign.
Anyone who wants to get involved, please visit my website. It's Winograd, WINOGRAD, for Congress.com, or become a fan on Facebook, Marcy Winograd for Congress. We need you because this is going to be a ground campaign. My opponent, Jane Harman, is one of the richest members of Congress. Her net worth is estimated between $300 and $400 million. I cannot compete on that level with a barrage of media, of ads. No, the only way that we can make this happen, and we very much can make it happen, is through an engaged field campaign, people adopting their neighborhoods or adopting other neighborhoods and walking them door to door. People will say, Marcy, this is exciting, but how can you possibly win against such an entrenched and rich opponent? And my response is, do you know what the difference was between winning and losing in 2006 when I challenged Jane Harman just 3 months before the primary? If I had had 6,000 of her votes, I would have won that election.
It's a very small number, and we're looking forward to you winning. One more thing I want to ask you. In our progressive movement, because of all of the emotional charge that we all have to set the record straight and to right the ship of state, sometimes we get to grousing with each other. What will be your message to progressives as we move forward into the next year?
We have to really work hard. We can promise and deliver on real change. We have to be out there in front, challenging, critically questioning all of the policies that we know are not what they should be. And certainly we have to continue to question and oppose, protest, organize against this policy of perpetual war and occupation. We have to promise peace, and we have to organize for everlasting peace.
I'm totally with you, sister. You know I am. Marcy, thank you for being on Connect the Dots, and I will be at your victory party next year.
Thank you, Brad. Great to be with you and your listeners.
We've been speaking with Marcy Winograd, candidate for Congress in the 36th Congressional District of California.